to share with us, and the topic is value-added assessments towards quality teaching and learning in creative arts. So, Samuel, I'm going to hand over to you. I know we lost a couple of minutes there with some technical difficulties, but you can go ahead. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Just want to share my screen and then I will continue.
Great, thank you.
Good audio, share sound. Presentation.
So, Pam, can I just check with you? My PowerPoint on your screen?
Hi, Samuel, we can see your presentation.
And there's movement.
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Great.
Hi, everybody. And my name is, as indicated, my name is Samuel Lundie. And thank you very much for choosing me or for choosing the topic. When I look at the program, you have a variety of excellent choices. And I see on the platform 180. So I'm so happy to have you on my screen here in my study room in Belleville. And really looking forward to share a few ideas with you. I have a very special interest in assessment, and especially how to use assessment to enhance learning. And I must say it was absolutely a wonderful experience preparing for this session because my focus is mainly on assessment in higher education and not really subject specific. But in preparing for the session, it was absolutely a wonderful experience to look at the interrelatedness or the relatedness between assessment and art. It's amazing. I know we all know that art there's an artful process, but what I've learned new after so many years working on this topic of assessment is that assessment, and especially assessment for learning, is also an artful process. So it's absolutely wonderful and I'm very excited, as you can see, to share a few ideas with you in terms of my findings. So the main purpose of this session is to look at art and to look at creative arts and to look at assessment and to see how assessment can add value to art, how assessment can contribute. And if we are talking about art, we are talking about art education. So we're looking at assessment, the purpose of assessment, and how can assessment shape learning, art learning, and how can assessment enhance art teaching. So we will start off short. I've just got about 20 minutes. We will start off with the challenges, not spending too much time on the negative part of art teaching and learning, but there are a few challenges. So we need to look at these challenges. If we want to add value, we need to find some solutions for these challenges. And then, and that was for me, the turning point in preparing for this session is to look at these challenges and perhaps not to look at what can we do better or where can we improve on, but rather let us look at assessment from a different point of view. Maybe we must just look differently at art education. So, and then we will move towards art assessment for learning. As I indicated, art assessment for learning or formative assessment is an artful process. And I love my subject. I'm very passionate about my subject, but learning about this, that my subject is also an artful process, I must say, I'm really happy to share this with you. And then we will look at the framework to look at how can we, especially in terms of feedback, how can we improve our practices through successful feedback. And then, colleagues, I've got a challenge for you. I'm going to ask you to assess formatively, artfully, to assess my presentation, and in the end, in the chat box or during this presentation, I want you to provide feedback to me in an artful way. I want you to provide feedback to me from a different point of view. I want you to provide feedback that has impact. Now, feedback that has impact bring change, but not only change, feedback that elicit change, that has the potential to bring even more change, like snowboarding. All right, so there's your challenge. So let me get right to it and let us start. What I've learned from this is that feedback is absolutely important in terms of the most effective teaching and learning strategies. And I haven't got time to explain this to you, but just to indicate to you how important feedback is. And I've got actually 3 questions, and thank you for the questions. All the questions are related to feedback, and hopefully during my presentation we will attend to these questions. But looking at the diagram on your right hand side in terms of the hierarchy, the level of importance, and there you see how important is feedback and the effect and the impact on feedback in terms of quality art teaching and learning. So and that's why I've chosen this topic, not only in terms of assessment for learning or art assessment for learning to add value, but to look at feedback, because feedback can make a very useful impact on your assessment practice. So feedback is absolutely crucial in terms of your assessment practices. Now, looking at the current this is the old days, the current assessment practices, there are a few approaches that actually do not add value to our art assessment education. And the one is the so-called feedback canon. There's also another metaphor that we can use. You get people, they provide feedback, colleagues, they provide feedback, but it's actually just throw something over the wall and expect that something will happen. So feedback, the feedback canon is the so-called one-way flow of information. It's normally assessment of learning or a summative assessment. It takes place after the learning or not really during the learning, and it's sort of an add-on. And it's not really integrated in the assessment process, and it's given to the students, right? And this is actually different from our perspective of assessment, because assessment is something we do for the students and with the students, and not given to the learners. So. And then what's very interesting, and we also see this in higher education as well, these beliefs are really deep, and to change these practices is absolutely quite a challenge. And then there's another approach that also does not add any value. It's a so-called sandwich process. And I must say, students, learners, they are not stupid. When you give them feedback and you try to sugarcoat, they wait. When you provide feedback and tell them no, this is good and this is fine and this is nice, but they are waiting. And they are waiting for the but, and they are waiting for the however, because the but and the however is absolutely crucial, because but and however disqualifies everything that's been said. If you want to provide quality feedback, and now that's the meat part, the critical constructive feedback, the pertinent points for improvement, that's the meat, and the students, the learners are waiting for that. So providing feedback, sugarcoating is not really the students, as I said, the students are not really stupid. Also important, one of the challenges for educators as well as for students is to see the usefulness of feedback. What's the in for them? How can they use it for improvement? And now the one question I've received in terms of to make assessment more relevant, more relatable for students. And colleague, I understand your question, because your question has got to do with this picture, because assessment, and especially assessment in arts, is context specific. All right, so the context create meaningfulness, and this has also got to do with the second question, and how to make assessment more, not only more meaningful to the students, but also more enjoyable, so that they can enjoy it. And that's because it's important that we need to take the context, the situation, the life environment, the views of the learners. We need the needs of the learners, how they think from their point of view. We must take it into consideration. So, but it's a challenge, because in terms of assessment, there's no one-size-fits-all approach that we can use. Now, this is a bit of a research done, just to show you. I've done some homework, but also according to research, is that most students want feedback. About 94% wanted feedback, and 76% of the students indicated that they need to use the feedback to improve on their assessment practices. All right, 37% said that the assessment are discouraging, so it's negative. It does not aid learning. So we need to look at assessment in a more, not nice, not sugarcoating, but constructing, that can bring about a change. So I haven't got enough time to share this in detail to you, but just to indicate to you, according to research, is that assessment and specifically feedback has a very powerful impact on art practices. Now, as I indicated, how do we move forward? Must we tell it better to the students, or must we try harder? No. The purpose of my presentation is to, let's look at assessment from a different point of view. Let's rethink, let's reconceptualize the way we think in terms of assessment. Let us think of assessment feedback as a process that can make sense to the students. Another question from a colleague, information that's useful, and then also the performance. How do we assess the performance, and then also the quality of the work? So it's important, if we want to change educators' assessment behavior, we must change the way they think. Now, I cannot change the way you think, but hopefully with this presentation, I can expand the way you are thinking in terms of assessment, because if we can expand the understanding of colleagues in terms of assessment and the way they think, we can perhaps then change the feedback behavior of assessment. All right, so according to that definition, it provides a framework for feedback. And first of all, we must see, as indicated, that feedback is a process over time with loops, closing the feedback loops, but important, a process that can result in change in work. And this is what we want to see. It's so wonderful. It's actually inspiring for a teacher as well, when you provide feedback to a student and you can see that the students are responsive, they change. That's actually better as your salary. And then the learners as well. The focus must be on the learners and what the learners do in the classroom. Teaching is what the teacher, not the teacher. Teaching is what the learner does in the classroom. So that is what we need to assess in the classroom. It must make sense. One question that we receive from the colleagues, and that's got to do with what must we do to make the feedback sense. It must bring change. So there must be specific points of improvement. Therefore, we need to use information that is useful for the students. And then we need to look at how we assess the performance, single components or a more integrated approach. If we are taking a process approach to assessment, to feedback, then it will give us an answer in terms of the performance. So we focus on the progression gained in terms of, and not really the end product. Impact, I think I've said enough in terms of impact. It must bring change, it must bring improvement. And then quality related, quality is still important, standards is still important, but we need to be very specific in terms of the criterion. The criteria must be clear and explicit, communicated to the students so that they know exactly what they need to do. So first of all, assessment is an art process, as I indicated, that for example, it must provide information so that the learning is informed. It must shape the learning and it must enhance the teaching, or it must enhance the teaching and shape the learning, the impact. And we can only manage this if we are closing the feedback loops. All right, so we must focus on learners and what learners do in the classroom, and this has got to do another one for the colleagues, for the one question I received in terms of how can we make it more relevant, more relatable for students, more student-centered, allow the students to take responsibility of their own learning. The students set their own goals, they assess their own works, so they participate in the learning process and with the guidelines of the teacher. Then the sense making, and you are more familiar than I with this, and that is art is a matter of self-expression. Therefore, we need to be very carefully in terms of how we assess the students. I think, and that was for me personally in preparing for the session, and the interrelatedness between formative assessment and art is that art assessment for learning is also an artful process and actually a very powerful tool to let the students' art voice develop. I think in terms of assessing the students is to keep in mind the bigger picture in terms of their artful voices. Now, in terms of to make it more meaningful to the students, is artful thinking, and it looks like Bloom's taxonomy. But in terms of artful learning and to make it more meaningful for the students, sense making for the students, it's very important that the students themselves should observe, should describe, question, find the complexity, exploring the art from different viewpoints, as well as the reasoning of the arts. If we are adding these artful thinking processes to art, then the students will enter into the art more deeply. And that is important. And then art will become more relevant to the students. Then they will make more sense. It will be more relatable to them because they are involved. They are taking the responsibility of their own learning. And this is how, if we are student-centered or learner-centered, in this way, we are actually developing the artistic voice of the students. So art assessment for learning, a very powerful tool in developing the artistic voice of students. So useful information is information that can create change. Information without effect, colleagues, waste of time. And we cannot afford to voice or to waste our time. Then looking at the information is to evaluate information. This is just an illustration. So colleagues will get a note in terms of their feedback designs if they are just delivering information to the students, and this information is hopefully, we give feedback to the students, it's provided on completion, summative as an add-on at the end of the work. And this type of information is not really useful, and it does not aid learning, and we do not monitor the effect of the information, of the feedback. All right, 0 for the colleagues. We will give a 1 for colleagues that actually structuring the assessment activities, sequencing in a progressive way. So there's a progressive build-up of activities and overlapping of learning outcomes. So the outcomes are aligned and integrated. Oh, my time is on.
Hi there, Samuel. You've just got about a minute left.
Okay. So let me just conclude this section. So the evolution of the feedback is where we sequence the assessment in such a way that it's progressive, and we provide them also information that assist the students to progress according to the set assessment task. And then a 2, that is actually full marks, is important of effect, but not only in terms of improvement, but also student-centered, that the students' response are not predictable. You will see on this PowerPoint, there's a video that actually illustrate this quite well. And this indicate that we also need to take the prior knowledge of the students into consideration. The students got different experiences, so they have different backgrounds, so they make sense in a different way of the content. And so if we're taking this into consideration in our feedback, that our students learn from experience, but they are different. They interpret the feedback differently. It provides then, we will give a mark for the students. Colleagues, to conclude this session, there are some more slides, but I will respect the time. Learners judge his own work. Learners ask for specific feedback. Other judges their work. They compare the judgments, and then they, with the teacher, they plan for improvement. All right, colleagues. So there are other slides. My time is up. Here's a very nice video in terms of blood clotting, and that will also indicate to you how to provide feedback that can actually not only elicit change, but even further change. So have a look at this this video. I want to thank you. Apology for not concluding time, but I hope that it adds some value to your assessment practices. Thank you so much.
Samuel, thank you so much. I think if you look at the chat, people are really appreciative of what you've shared with us today and how you have helped us to think a little bit differently about assessments in the creative arts. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your knowledge with us. It's been absolutely wonderful. There are also some questions for you in the Q&A section of the community. I just want to quickly, I know we've got run out of time, but there's one question that I just want to highlight to you. Maybe you can answer in 30 seconds. Natalie asked or says many learners place too much value on the final product and tend to become flustered and unfocused when working towards it. How can I help refocus their attention on engaging and enjoying the process and not becoming overwhelmed by the end result? Could you perhaps just give us in 30 seconds just some insight for Natalie around that?
Yeah, there are two words that's so important, and it's got to do with how the teacher is going to structure the learning. The two words that Natalie need to remember is scaffolding and layering. It's so important, and I think as an artist, they know exactly what I'm talking about. So what they need to do is they need to, when they design the task, they need to keep in mind how students are thinking, student-centered. And then when they design the activities, remember the caterpillar, the pictures. So they need to structure it from a simple to a structure, from simple to complex, not only in terms of content and procedure, but also in terms of context. But focus on the process and not the end product. Why students are focusing on the end product is because we are assessing the end product. If we are going to focus our feedback and assessing on the process, they will also focus on the process. All right, because assessment drives learning. So I hope I answered that question.
Thank you. Wow, I'm really inspired by that, and thank you so much for helping Natalie out. And to all the attendees who's been on the session, don't forget that you can still access Samuel's presentation on the Woover app after the conference. So you're more than welcome to go back and watch again, because I'm sure there was lots that we can go back and pick up on again. So Samuel, once again, thank you so much. And to all our attendees, remember there's another set of workshops that will be happening shortly, so you can log off this one now